Ladies and gentlemen, let's commence the event with the briefing note on safety and security from the hotel. So we would like to invite the hotel representative to brief us.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Bapak dan Ibu. Selamat pagi. Welcome to DoubleTree by Hilton Surabaya. My name is Satrio Ginayungan, and I'm as a security supervisor in the DoubleTree by Hilton Surabaya. Thank you for choosing us for your accommodation and even in Surabaya. Your safety is our priority. We would like to pay attention in our safety feature in case of emergency. DoubleTree by Hilton Surabaya is equipped with 24 hours a day control and monitoring system. Its meeting room is equipped with fire extinguisher, sprinkler, and smoke detector. DoubleTree by Hilton Surabaya has 3 emergency exit door to assembly point. And in the event of emergency, please remain calm and do not panic. If you hear the evacuation message, our team will direct you to the nearest exit to the assembly point. The hotel has an emergency response team that is on standby 24 a day. Thank you for your trust and enjoy your memorable DoubleTree by Hilton Surabaya. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask permission from the invited guests. We will dim the room light because soon the event will start. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review, or ARMOR, 4th edition, and the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal. Ladies and gentlemen, in our effort to become the knowledge hub on disaster management in ASEAN, the AHA Center has been publishing ARMOR since 2019. ARMOR has been serving as a platform to consolidate knowledge and highlight emerging trends in ASEAN disaster risk landscape, and also to inform policy and operational decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, the Atlas itself is a one-stop service web portal to manage donors and partners to support the AHA Center among the wide range of functions. It is also to be able to provide a snapshot of the AHA Center's partnership and their contributions to the AHA Center. Ladies and gentlemen, through the Atlas itself, the AHA Center hopes to improve transparency and also accountability in our collaborations with the donors and also partners. Both the ARMOR and the Atlas are supported by the European Union, our long-standing partners of the AHA Center since our establishment in 2011. Today, ladies and gentlemen, the AHA Center will be launching the 4th edition of Armor, featuring the exciting panel discussion session, as well as the video launch of the Atlas itself, to introduce to us our new web-based management portal for grant and partnership. In addition to that, we would like to invite audience to access the program book by using the QR code provided in each table. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to commence this event, we would like to welcome Colonel Muhammad Harith Rashidi bin Haji Muhammad Yamin, the Director of the National Disaster Management Center of Brunei Darussalam and the Chair of the Governing Board of the AHA Center, to deliver the welcoming remarks. Colonel Harith, the screen is yours.
Dr. Raditya Jati, Deputy Minister on System and Strategy, BNPB Indonesia. Mr. Lucas Gados, Deputy Head of Mission of the EU Delegation to ASEAN. Mr. Lee Yang Ming, Executive Director of the AHA Center. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As Chair of the Governing Board of the AHA Center, it is with great pleasure that I am able to welcome you all to the launch of the 4th edition of ASEAN Risk Monitor in Disaster Management Review, or AMR, and the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal, or ATLAS. Today marks a significant step forward in our collective efforts to enhance disaster management within ASEAN, and it is my honor to highlight the pivotal support provided by the European Union through the EU SAHA project to the AHA Center to continue serving as a knowledge hub for disaster management within ASEAN. With its latest edition, AMA remains dedicated to providing scientific information that serve as a reliable reference for policymakers, experts, and academia across ASEAN. It's through initiatives like AMA that we empower decision makers with the insight needed to navigate the complex risk landscape of our region. I believe it is also timely that the 4th edition of AMA, rendering 2023 Disastergram, is ASEAN going to the right path for sustainable resilience, coincide with the ASEAN Leaders Declaration for Sustainable Resilience adopted at the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Indonesia last year. As ASEAN moves towards becoming a global leader in disaster management, sustainable resilience is paramount in the context of the ever-changing disaster risk landscape, and it is important that ASEAN promotes collaborations and cooperations amongst all levels of stakeholders in disaster risk reduction. And now, with the introduction of ATLAS, the AHA Center continues to enhance its grant management processes, ensuring swift and effective assistance to those in need. This portal will serve as a valuable one-stop source of information for the AHA Center's partners and donors, enabling them to access vital information regarding their contributions and furthering our collective efforts towards building a safer and more resilient ASEAN. In the age of digitalization, platforms such as ATLAS will improve transparency and accountability, opening new doors of opportunity for the AHA Center as the regional coordinating center for disaster management in ASEAN to continue to collaborate with current and potential donors and partners. In closing, I once again would like to thank the European Union for your continuous support to the AHA Center through the EU SAHA project, and I would like to congratulate the AHA Center on this momentous occasion. Let us seize this opportunity to reaffirm our dedication to collaboration, innovation, and solidarity as ASEAN continues its journey towards becoming a global leader in disaster management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Harith, for the opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like now to invite Dr. Raditya Jati, the Deputy Minister on System and Strategy from National Disaster Management Authority of the Republic of Indonesia, to deliver his welcoming remarks as the host of this morning. Dr. Raditya Jati, the floor is yours.
Honorable guest, Colonel Mohammed Hamid Rasidi bin Haj Mujamin, the Director of the National Disaster Management Center of Brunei Darussalam, Chair of the Governing Board of AHA Center, Mr. Lucas Gados, Deputy Head of the Mission of the European Union, Delegation of ASEAN, Mr. Liam Ming, my friend, Executive Director of the AHA Center, representative from ASEAN member states, AHA Center partners, friends, academic and research institutions, also my friend from Timor-Leste, Mr. Ismael de Costa Babo, the President of Civil Protection Authority of Timor-Leste. Thank you for joining us. Esteemed participant of the launch of the Armor 4th edition and Atlas portal participating both online and offline, distinguished participant. A warm welcome is extended to all distinguished guests arriving in Surabaya City, the capital of East Java Province. Thank you for honoring the AHA Center's invitation to today's event. For those visiting the city for the first time, we encourage you to immerse yourself in a charm and savor of delight of East Javanese cuisine, such as rawon or such a Javanese cafe, conveniently located near the venue. Surabaya City stands as one of the Indonesian largest urban centers, steeped as a rich history of our heroic struggles during the fight for the independence. Since 2019, the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review, or ARMOR, overseen by the AHA Center, has been dedicated to furnish scientific foundation for decision-making in disaster management within ASEAN. In its 4th edition, ARMOR delved the sustainable resilience concept, championed by Indonesia at GPDR 2022, and subsequently endorsed by the ASEAN leaders in 2023. Sustainable resilience necessitates a comprehensive approach, and its edition in ARMOR serves as a vital resource, offering insight gleaned from a latest research endeavor, lessons learned, bridging of gaps, enhanced collaboration. By nurturing communication and partnership among member states and stakeholders, we can harness the collective strengthened resources, therefore fortifying a more resilient regional response network. Today marked the unveiling of the ARMOR 4th theme, rendering 2023 Disastergram is ASEAN on the path of sustainable resilience. The edition aligned with the global effort to bolster the disaster and climate resilience, echoing the agenda of Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, SDGs, and the Paris Agreement. With the escalation of the frequency and severity of extreme weather events due to climate change, our approach must shift towards sustainable resilience. ARMOR 4th serve as a crucial resources, offering insight, lessons, and fostering collaboration to fortify our regional response network. Through communication and partnership, we aim to harness the collective strength towards a future where communities not only withstand disaster, but also thrive in their aftermath. Today's event aims to achieve two primary objectives. Firstly, to disseminate the key finding of the article featured in the ARMOR of the 4th edition publication widely. And secondly, to raise awareness about disaster risk innovation, stakeholders collaboration, serving as a foundation for policy and decision-making in advancing sustainable resilience within ASEAN. We extend our appreciation to AHA Center and ACDM Working Group on Global Leadership for highlighting sustainable resilience as the theme of publication, aligning with the ASEAN Leader Declaration. Indonesia, as both as the author and the member of the Board of Editors, extend its supports. Furthermore, as part of the ACDM, Indonesia eagerly anticipates participating in the launch of Atlas, the AHA Center's Grant and Partnership Management Portal. Atlas aims to streamline processes by providing a one-stop web-based portal for generating data, managing donor and partner support, enhancing transparency, and fostering accountability and collaboration. In conclusion, I extend my heartfelt appreciation and congratulations to the AHA Center and all stakeholders for their dedicated efforts in successfully launching the 4th edition of ARMOR and AHA Center Grant Partnership Management Portal Atlas. I express gratitude to the European Union for their support enabling the AHA Center to become a knowledge hub for disaster management. Let us continue to promote sustainable resilience and increase disaster and climate resilience in the Asian region as mandated by the ASEAN Leader Declaration. Together, through the collaboration and innovation, we can build the united ASEAN that is not only resilient but thrive in the face of adversity. Let us ensure that future generations inherit a region where they can live, work, prosper in a safe and sustainable environment. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya Jati. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, next, we would like to invite Mr. Lia Ming, the Executive Director of the AHA Center, to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Lia Ming, the floor is yours.
Colonel Muhammad Harif Rashidi bin Haji Muhammad Jamin, Director of the National Disaster Management Center of Brunei Darussalam, Dr. Radia Jadi, Deputy Minister of System and Strategy of BNPB Indonesia, Mr. Lucas Gados, Deputy Head of Mission of the European Union to ASEAN, representatives of the ASEAN member states. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I wish to echo the earlier distinguished speakers in welcoming you to the launch of the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review 4th edition, or ARMOR in short, and the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal, also introduced as the Atlas Portal. Since 2019, the ARMOR publication has served as a platform to promote thought dialogue on evolving disaster risk landscape in ASEAN and novel approaches to address the region's vulnerability to natural hazards. In this regard, ARMOR has been part of the AHA Center's effort to inquire, innovate, and inspire new ways to support ASEAN member states' national disaster management organizations to enhance the collective capacity to reduce disaster risk and bolster emergency response. Today, we are delighted to mark yet another milestone in the publication's history by launching the 4th edition of ARMOR, themed Rendering 2023 Disastergram. Is ASEAN going the right path for sustainable resilience? The effects of climate change are becoming more pronounced, and the Southeast Asia region is facing the brunt force of these natural hazards. As such, there is greater focus and concerted efforts to ensure that our region is resilient, and importantly, that this resilience is sustainable. In this edition of the ARMOR publication, the AHA Center aims to achieve three intertwined objectives to strengthen ASEAN's resilience to natural hazards sustainably. First, the AHA Center aims to promote disaster resilience through education and information sharing. By strengthening the whole of ASEAN participation in risk awareness and governance, we can provide a sound foundation to achieve this sustainability. Second, the AHA Center aims to bridge the gap between 1. Research and operation, 2. Academics and policymakers, and 3. Theories and practice. It is our hope that by facilitating informed operations planning and decision-making, we will promote greater understanding between the risk management stakeholders. Finally, the AHA Center aims for the ARMOR to serve as a credible scientific reference on ASEAN's disaster risk analysis, monitoring, and research. It is important to the AHA Center as the knowledge hub on disaster management in ASEAN to promote evidence-based thematic synthesis report on ASEAN member states' disaster risk, as well as groundbreaking technology and innovations in the field. In this regard, allow me to express our appreciation to the ARMOR auditors, the authors, Board of Editors, the Board of Reviewers, and all parties that have contributed to the successful publication of ARMOR 4th edition. Not forgetting also the support of European Union through the integrated program in enhancing the capacity of AHA Center and the ASEAN Emergency Response Mechanism, EU-SAHA project, without which the ARMOR initiative would not have been the success it is today. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, also supported by the European Union through the EU-SAHA project is the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal, or ATLAS, which I am pleased to announce is launched today. The ATLAS was developed as a one-stop service web-based portal to improve transparency and accountability of the AHA Center's collaborations with its donors and partners. Beyond the AHA Center's endeavor to improve information sharing with our stakeholders, the ATLAS represents the AHA Center's commitment to continue innovating and improving our ways of working. In closing, the ARMOR 4th edition and the ATLAS portal share a common objective of facilitating information sharing to create a more disaster-resilient ASEAN region, albeit through different means. As we celebrate the launch of these two milestones, I encourage everyone to remain steadfast and committed to build a sustainable, disaster-resilient ASEAN community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liam Ming, for the opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we would like to invite Mr. Lucas Gados, the Deputy Head of Mission of the European Union to ASEAN, to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of the European Union delegation to ASEAN as part of the AHA Center. Mr. Gados, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind words of introduction. Your Excellency, Colonel Muhammad Harit Rashidi bin Haji Muhammad Jamin, Director of the National Disaster Management Center of Brunei Darussalam, Chair of the Governing Board of the AHA Center, Dr. Raditya Jati, Deputy Minister on System and Strategy, National Disaster Management Agency of Indonesia, Mr. Liam Ming, Executive Director of the AHA Center, representatives of ASEAN member states, AHA Center partners and friends, academics, research institutions, esteemed participants of the launch of the 4th edition of the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review, and AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal. Good morning to all of you. Although neither our ambassador, who's currently outside of the country, nor I can join you physically in Surabaya, Kota Pahlawan today, it is my pleasure and honor to join you virtually to celebrate the launch of two important initiatives in the field of regional disaster management. The fourth edition of the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review, also known as ARMOR, and the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal, also known as ATLAS. Since 2019, ARMOR has played a crucial role in providing a robust foundation for informed decision-making in disaster management within the ASEAN region. I'm pleased to confirm that the European Union has been a steadfast supporter of this initiative, having contributed to its second and third editions, and now, once again, to the fourth edition. This year, ARMOR's theme, Rendering 2023 Disastergram, Is ASEAN Going the Right Path for Sustainable Resilience, underscores the commitment of ASEAN member states to strengthen disaster resilience, aligning with the Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The fourth edition also showcases the EU's dedication to realizing ASEAN as a disaster-resilient region through knowledge sharing and research. In tandem with our commitment to knowledge dissemination and disaster resilience, the EU is proud to support the AHA Center in the development of the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal, ATLAS. This portal is a testament to our shared commitment to innovation and collaboration, streamlining processes and enhancing responsiveness in disaster management across ASEAN. It is not merely a tool, it also represents a pledge to strengthen coordination, efficiency, and collaboration from anywhere in the region. ATLAS, with its reliable information and donor partner database, exemplifies the AHA Center's proactive and collaborative disaster management strategy. I encourage the AHA Center to persist in your efforts to innovate and enhance the portal, ensuring that it becomes an invaluable resource for strategizing collaboration among partners. On a more personal note, I also recall our first meeting with Executive Director Lia Ming, and ATLAS was one of the points of discussion. So, being here with you today, albeit virtually, I'm extremely happy to see ATLAS coming full circle, and more broadly, the AHA Center going from strength to strength. On behalf of the European Union, I extend my congratulations to the AHA Center on the launch of the fourth edition of ARMOR and ATLAS. This achievement reflects the dedication and hard work of all of you who've been involved in advancing disaster management within ASEAN. The EU is committed to support ASEAN's endeavors to enhance its disaster response capacity through the integrated program in enhancing the capacity of AHA Center and ASEAN emergency response mechanisms, also known to many of you as EU-SAHA, launched in 2020. In the realm of disaster management, the EU-SAHA stands as a proof of the success that can be achieved through EU and ASEAN collaboration. As we celebrate the launch of the fourth edition of ARMOR and ATLAS today, let me reiterate the EU's unwavering commitment to supporting the AHA Center in facilitating knowledge exchange and collaborations. Together, we aim to contribute to the realization of a disaster-resilient ASEAN. The journey ahead may be challenging, but with collaborative efforts, innovation, and commitment, I am certain that we can build a safer and more resilient future for the ASEAN region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas Gados. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce the launch of the fourth edition of the ASEAN Risk Monitor and Disaster Management Review, or ARMOR. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the theme, Rendering 2023 Disastergram, Is ASEAN Going to the Right Path for Sustainable Resilience? This edition is expected to contribute to the promotion of global action to strengthen disaster resilience. With the reference to the concept of sustainable resilience from the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction GPDRR 2022 in Indonesia, the ARMOR 4th edition focused on the promotion of the stakeholder collaboration to accelerate the achievement of the sustainable resilience through the lens of the strengthened risk reductions through cultural and education, investment in science, technology, and innovations, climate and disaster resilience infrastructure, and also implementation of the global commitments. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite Mr. Lee Yaming, the Executive Director of the AHA Center, and Dr. Raditya Jati, the Deputy Minister on System and Strategy of BNPB Indonesia, to the stage to unveil the Armor 4th edition to the public. Mr. Lee and Dr. Raditya, please. So, Mr. Lee Yaming and Dr. Raditya Jati, on the count of 3, you may unveil the Armor 4th edition. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, please give another round of applause for the newly launched Armor 4th edition. Mr. Lee Yaming and Dr. Raditya Jati, we expect you to remain at the stage. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to take this opportunity to present tokens of appreciation to the authors of the Armor 4th edition. Therefore, we would like to invite to the stage one representative from all 10 articles of the Armor 4th editions. Ladies and gentlemen, we request Mr. Liam Ming, Dr. Aditya Jati, and the authors to stay on the stage for a photo opportunity. Mr. Liam Ming, Dr. Aditya Jati, and the authors, we will be having a photo 2 times. The first time will be very formal. Please smile within 3, 2, 1. One more, 3, 2, 1. The next photo will one ASEAN, one respond pose. 3, 2, 1. One more, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may now return to your seat. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a 10-minute coffee breaks. So we have proposed some refreshment outside of the hall. And we also invite everyone in this room to visit the Art Center exhibition booth in the foyer. So enjoy the coffee break. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We hope you enjoy the coffee break and had a chance to visit the AHA Center exhibition booth. Moving on to the next agenda, so we would like to invite Dr. Raditya Jati, the Deputy Minister on System and Strategy from BNPB of the Republic of Indonesia, to the stage to deliver the keynote address on rendering 2023 Disastergram. Is ASEAN going to the right path for the sustainable resilience? Dr. Raditya, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So, first of all, I would like to start by a question. Why are we here today, and why are we talking about sustainable resilience? I believe that most of you, also some of your writing, your author, had been also providing the insight of sustainable resilience can be enrichment of this ARMOR publication. Let me start by the publication of the fourth ARMOR and its focus sustainable resilience is a very important step in our journey to implement the ASEAN Leader Declaration on Sustainable Resilience, which was agreed and adopted in 43rd of the ASEAN Summit on the 5th September 2023. I believe you know these gentlemen here. Of course, the declaration aims to promote sustainable resilience as an enabling framework to enhance collaboration in strengthening climate change and disaster resilience for sustainable development by aligning key initiatives related to the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Paris Agreement with Sustainable Development Goals at the national and local levels. The importance of achieving sustainable resilience is articulated in the ASEAN leaders as part of the efforts to strengthen the resiliency of ASEAN community in the face of the escalating uncertainty and complexity of the disaster risk landscape in the region and the interconnected transboundary risk, including the impact of climate change and midst of the achieving sustainable development. Sustainable resilience has been a nearly 2-year journey so far, which originated by the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction 2022 in Bali. Since then, we have seen a steady increase of recognition of the importance of better harmonizing the way the both describe and work on climate change, disaster resilience, sustainable developments. These 3 areas of works are all part of the same puzzle, and how we approach them makes the significant difference. This proposition formed the basis of some of a very lively discussion at the first Global Forum for Sustainable Resilience 2023 that Indonesia hosted a year ago as part of the follow-up of the introduction to the concept of GPDRR 2022. One of the key outcomes from the forum was that sustainable resilience should be approached as an overarching umbrella for a collaborative effort to build resilience and achieve sustainable development. The first Global Forum on Sustainable Resilience 2023 roughly translated sustainable resilience as the outcome of the ability to effectively address complex, fundamental, and systemic issues while also aligning key initiatives to strengthen climate and disaster resilience for sustainable developments. Now, we need to figure out how to adapt and programmatize this all at all levels. Ladies and gentlemen, so what exactly is sustainable resilience all about? Is this simply another race to manufacture empty rhetoric? Or Is this a way forward worth considering the anticipating increased complexity, uncertainty, and interconnected transboundary risks and threats, not only within the ASEAN region, but also outside and across of the planet? Please allow me to contribute a few thoughts here. I'm pleased that my colleagues and I have been able to contribute one of the articles in Armor this year, and our contribution entitled Building Sustainable Resilience, Navigating Systemic Risks, Enhancing Resilience. I don't intend to summarize the entire articles here, since in my opinion, at least it makes of interesting reading for you. I would like to urge you to study it, but here a few points from it. Government have been expressed commitment to build disaster resilience, deal with climate change, and create sustainable development pathways. However, their societal, political, and economic choices do not always reflect these commitments. Many disaster events are interlinked, caused by the individual and collective behavior of people, and have interconnected root causes. To address these challenges, there is a need for strategic, integrated, and synergized solutions that combine policies and strategies that address the root causes of these challenges while anticipating future ones. Sustainable resilience offers a systemic risk governance approach that will address present and future systemic risks. This approach combines effort to address the root causes, these challenges, also anticipating the challenges of the future. Through this approach, we can towards more sustainable and resilient future. In simple terms, as outlined in the ASEAN Leader Declaration, sustainable resilience is an effort to strengthen climate and disaster resilience for sustainable development. Sustainable resilience is therefore an effort to align convergence and address climate change, disaster resilience, and sustainable development as a unified whole that is interconnected and inseparable from one another. And so it's important to look in the sustainable resilience as an enabling framework and collaborative platform for multi-stakeholders to promote convergence and coherence in the implementation of the Paris Agreement on the climate change and Sendai framework on disaster risk resilience and sustainable development goals. In our paper for the Armor, we also propose that in order to achieve sustainable resilience, there are at least 5 fundamental framework elements that need to be addressed. The first one is governance. Strengthen anticipatory, responsive, and adaptive disaster preparedness culture and institution, as well as commitment to implement global agreement at national and local level. Secondly, is about investment. Shifting from viewing climate and disaster resilience as a cost to investment that will contribute to achievement of sustainable development. Therefore, access to finance that prioritize coherent and coordinated action is a key if we want to achieve sustainable resilience. Third is about climate and disaster resilience infrastructure. Without resilience infrastructure, as we have seen on too many occasions, disaster will simply destroy our development gains, often in a matter of minutes, which then take years and already stretch resources to rebuild. Fourth, science and technology. Increasing the role of the science and technology in providing scientific evidence and solution for policy formulation, problem solving, the decision making. Fifth is about people-centered focus, related on resilience is local and contextually. Therefore, overarching design on sustainable resilience must be a people-centered. By centralizing this principle into our action, we can better navigate the complexity of this planet, build more resilient future, and create a world where we not just survive but thrive. Underpinning everything we must do be our collective aspiration and understanding that the people must be front and center in the element of the process. Our paper also suggests that the journey towards policy programs and lived exploration which centralize sustainable resilience require paradigm shift. It demands that we more clearly accept that see the planet as a system, understanding that interdependencies flow beyond man-made borders and nation-state constructs, and acting as a long-term perspective rather than short-termism of planning. Ladies and gentlemen, the first manifestation of the directive provided to us from the leader declaration in the armor, a clear demonstration of ASEAN operational commitment to sustainable resilience and the beginning of the cross-ASEAN thinking on how to do on sustainable resilience. So thank you again to the ASEAN and AHA Center colleagues for demonstrating what leadership can do. Our forward pathway within the ASEAN needs now to force the back of this important analytical document. And so, a kind request of the ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management and our friends in Singapore, as well the ASEAN Secretariat and AHA Center, it is my earnest to hope that perhaps sustainable resilience can be further discussed as a center theme of the upcoming strategic policy dialogue on disaster management, or SPDDM, in Singapore in August this year. Policy dialogue and carving out on the space will provide the chance further discuss and work out the next step of the implementation of the ASEAN Leader Declaration. We should also explore through ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management and the ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on the Disaster Management, or ACDM, and AMMDM, how we might best ensure that our emerging discourse of strategy on sustainable resilience can be adequate reflect the 2045 ASEAN vision and blueprints, as well as the successor document to the ASEAN Vision 2025 on disaster management. For our part, Indonesia will host the second Global Forum for Sustainable Resilience in Jakarta in September 2024, in conjunction with the 20th commemoration of the Indian Ocean tsunami. This may be a useful waypoint of the further deliberation, both with the ASEAN region and our partners from across the planet. In the preparation that meeting and a part of the commemorative event on the 20th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, Indonesia and Australia are jointly preparing and will publish a learning report which will map progress over the 2 decades through a trend of analysis as a basis upon which provide forward-facing recommendation and concrete step that we can collectively take a strengthen the operationalization of sustainable resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, with the adoption of the ASEAN Leader Declaration, it is clear that promoting sustainable resilience should now become collective ASEAN priority. Let us work together in promoting this crucial agenda to our citizens along the partners and the wider international community. Reference to sustainable resilience is now included in various of international forums such as G20, the review of 2030 Sustainable Development and Disaster Risk Reduction Agenda, and the UN General Assembly. We, the people of ASEAN, as the champion of this framework, should not shy away from the leading of discussion, promoting the facilitating debate and deliberation of the sustainable resilience in any appropriate event. And perhaps, with the blessing of the ACDM in Singapore, as well as the support of the ASEAN Secretariat and AHA Center, we will granted the opportunity for the true discussion on sustainable resilience in the upcoming ASEAN SPDDM this year, and another significant event deemed appropriate ASEAN. We firmly believe that sustainable resilience is one of the potential pathway to the secure future in which planet and people can thrive together. The Armor provides a welcome and timely series of perspective on how we are doing in designing and building the pathway. Whether we choose to then navigate the pathway rest of the series of decisions we must take and make here across the 10, soon we will be 11 capitals of our ASEAN region, and rather than onlooker on the conference of the halls in Geneva and New York. Indonesia is committed in playing its role. Will you join us? In closing, I was reminded in a quote attributed by Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Together, let us seize the opportunity to shape the future where resilience, sustainability, and prosperity are shared by all. I thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Warm greeting from Thailand. My name is Palida Puapan. I serve as the Plan and Policy Analyst at the Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation, Ministry of Interior, Thailand. I am delighted to represent one of the authors of an article in the ASMO 4th edition from DDPM, Thailand. The ASMO play a crucial role in the building science-led decision-making. In this 4th edition, the ASMO also promotes the sustainable resilience by furthering the comprehensive discussion on sustainable resilience. Additionally, ASMO addressed the challenge associated with implementing the resilience strategy in our regions. Our contribution on this year ASMO edition is mostly craft. We identify the critical gap and propose the forward-thinking perspective for the long-term drought prevention and sustainable drought management. Our insights are grounded in the direct field observation and scientific advancement related to the drought. Through this effort, we aspire to make the meaningful impact in the advancing sustainable resilience across the ASEAN regions. As we move forward, it's become evident that sustainable resilience is not an isolated pursuit. It thrives on the collaborative endeavor. By sharing knowledge and expertise, we can accurately fulfill the ASMO core objective. That is, bridging the scientific insight into the effective decision-making process. Lastly, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to the National Research Council of Thailand, our dedicated supervisor at DDPM Thailand, the AHA Center, and ACDM Working Group on Global Leadership. Their unwavering support for our article and commitment to promote the ASMO 4th edition are deeply appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya, for the keynote address and also from the DDPM Thailand. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the panel discussion, and we also have our moderator today. So he is the founder and the CEO of the Nexus Resilience Group, a newly established firm focusing on the climate and disaster resilience for sustainable development. He also the founding executive director of the AHA Center, concluding his term in service in 2016. Prior to this, he was the Deputy Minister and Head of Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Agency, or BRR, of the Indonesian government following the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that devastated Aceh, and then served as the senior advisor to the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of ASEAN in Myanmar, responding to 2008 Cyclone Nargis. So we honor to invite Mr. Said Faisal to the stage as the moderator today. Mr. Said Faisal, the stage is yours.
Let me get my note. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about armor and sustainable resilience. First, congratulations to the armor team, to the AHA Center. 5 years. Continue to produce a reference for the region and the world about disaster management in ASEAN. So for that, big round of applause for Armor 4th edition. Now, we discussed in Armor, as mentioned by Dr. Raditya Jati, about sustainable resilience. We have heard the importance of it and what the future looks like and how ASEAN will move forward on sustainable resilience. What is interesting, expanding from a speech from Dr. Aditya Jati, we can see that actually when we talk about sustainable resilience, when we talk about climate change, disaster resilience, and sustainable development, on the ground is a one issue. As put rightly by Dr. Aditya Jati, is a united issue, inseparable from one another. It gets separated because of administrative boundaries. Because different organization is dealing with different issues. One organization dealing with climate change, one organization dealing with disaster resilience, another organization dealing with sustainable development. But on the ground, for a farmer that, because of the climate change, not getting so much rain, get drought instead, and then they cannot harvest their paddy field. It becomes a disaster. It's not only natural disaster, we want to put that way, but also economic disaster, because that farmer lost income, which contribute to inability to achieve sustainable development. So on the ground, for the village level, these three things actually are one issue. So that we call sustainable resilience is about putting these three things in one. 3 in 1. That's what sustainable resilience all about. But I'm not qualified to talk more about that. That's why we have a great panelist today. So let us call our panelist. First panelist, let us welcome Miss Octavi Anda Resta, or Miss Tata, please. So, Miss Tata is a disaster analyst at BNPB Indonesia. She's a former awardee of German Academic Exchange Service scholarship, starting her journey from Gajah Mada University as a student, and then now with BNPB. Thank you so much, Ibu, for joining us. Then the second panelist today would be Mr. Sadhu Zukruf Janotama. Please join us to the stage. Big round of applause to Mr. Sadhu. He is a disaster monitoring and analysis officer at the AHA Center. So we've been involved a lot in spatial data analysis and management in variety of projects during his career. And he's part of the writers as well for Armor. Please, Pak Sadhu. Then our third panelist would be Mr. Randy Ian F. Gallego, RNMA. Please, sir, joining us. Mr. Ian is is a registered nurse and associate professor at the Mindanao State University main campus. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. And then we also have Mr. Sheikh Fairul Edros Ahmad Sheikh. Please join us, Mr. Fairul. He is a PhD candidate from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And he's focusing on a lot of research, particularly in Indonesia using socio-ecological system perspective. We'll talk about that more. And we also have today Dr. Tana Lechimi Hoset. Please join us. Big round of applause. He has a PhD in monitoring manager Asia Pacific at the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC. Thank you so much, everyone. Now, we're going to have a bit of a conversation on sustainable resilience and also, most importantly as well, the articles that you have written for Arbor. Let's start our helicopter view from the above. We have heard the speech from Dr. Aditya Jati about sustainable resilience as an effort about combining these three things into one, which is very interesting as well because so far these three important agenda being treated differently as if it was no connection. But I would like to ask your view, your observation, anything you want to say about sustainable resilience, your first impression, if you want to say that. Ibu, start with you.
Thank you, Pak Said Faisal. I don't think there's anything left for me to say after what Dr. Aditya Jati has comprehensively delivered to the audience. But yeah, maybe first of all, I would like to make kind of disclaimer to the audience first, because behind these articles, the co-authors behind these articles and the people who generously share their minds with the co-authors in these articles are all policymakers. We are not researchers, so that's why maybe this article was far from perfect about how we define the sustainable resilience, and we are here to happily discuss about it. We are here to warmly receive your inputs, your comments, and your suggestions about it. Regarding to what my impression about the sustainable resilience itself, I will just maybe add a very minor detail. It's about how we try to make the future less vulnerable by combining those three paradigms into one. That's for me.
Thank you so much, Ibu. It's not an easy task as well to give an opinion after your boss talking about something. So that was not the case. So, but it was well put. I'll go to you, please. What is your observation, impression about sustainable resilience?
Thank you, Bapak, for the question. First, when I heard about sustainable resilience, actually, I also want to highlight what our executive director from the ASEAN Center, Pak Idi Liaming, mentioned about when we talk about resilience in the ASEAN region, what most important is what this resilience can be sustainable. So when we talk about resilience, maybe there is an effort to build resilience. It can be sustainable and not sustainable. And when it comes to sustainable, that is what we want to achieve in this region, sustainable resilience. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Ian, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the AHA Center for the invitation to be here. Talking about sustainable resilience, I was listening to the presentation earlier, and I'd like to build up on what was said about the framework where for disaster risk reduction efforts to be sustainable, the framework where the people is at the center is very important. I think there's cruciality in that. Given that there may be different paradigms. For instance, we have sectors that looks at climate change. There are sectors that looks at disaster risk reduction and sustainable development. They might be different agencies that we think might be working in silo, but in reality, in the grassroots level, we have to make sure that all these informed policies and evidence-based researches and policies translate to people on the ground. Therefore, the lens usually is that we're looking at the macro level perspective. It should translate to the grassroots. So therefore, there must be synergy, harmonization in all these approaches and efforts for disaster risk, and make it work on the level of the grassroots, on the level of the people, the individuals on the ground. Especially that with the work that I'm doing, it's basically looking at, maybe I'll have to talk about it later, but essentially it's the sociological perspective where people and individual will have to be proactive in terms of doing strategies to promote sustainable and assertive works on disaster prevention.
Okay, good, good. Actually, I have one question as a follow-up of your explanation, because it somehow visualized in my mind when you mentioned about one is the policy and then the other one is grassroots, and it's very important these two get connected. Have you seen from your experience about the gap of policy and what happened on the ground? Meaning, like, policy is going to the left, on the ground, grassroots is going to the right. Any thought on that?
We have seen it consistently from where I come from. In my context, I see how there are so many very good measures and policies that are not actually applied and being implemented at the grassroots level. It may be because resources are not enough, not the wherewithals are inefficient or not sufficient, and this is commonly being seen at this point in time. So there is a need at this point to bridge that particular gap. Maybe we just have to push further in our efforts to make sure that the researches in the academia, the policies that we have in the admin level are being translated and seen by the people who are experiencing disasters on the ground.
Thank you. That's put us a thought later we can discuss about when we moving forward in sustainable resilience, how do we bridge this gap to ensure that policy on sustainable resilience actually reach the ground and can be implemented. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'll go to Mr. Fairul. Your thoughts on sustainable resilience.
Yeah, I'll provide more of like an academic perspective on this. So I do a lot of work in my own research in understanding how sustainability and resilience are being defined by different stakeholders. So I think that's very important to understand, is aligning all the different goals of different stakeholders, especially when thinking about private sector, people, governments. All this, they have different perspectives on what this is. So if you bring in another framework of sustainable resilience, then everyone will have their own interpretation on what that is. So it's a lot about building relationships and understanding how different stakeholders understand this and come to a consensus on how we can actually achieve this. And through these goals, then we can talk about implementation. What are the tools? So I'll be probably talking about some of the technologies that we can use to achieve these goals, but we need to first come to a consensus on what are the goals that we want to achieve and what these concepts actually mean for all of us.
You mentioned the word alignment or aligning, because this will involve a different type of stakeholders which represent different interests to whatever the stakeholders group belong to. And you mentioned also about the importance of having a goal to reach together. But from your study, perhaps, or observation, any important element that will drive alignment would be more successful? Meaning that if we want to have a productive or positive alignment, what would be the condition that need to be met?
So I study a lot of new towns developments in Indonesia. And I think in understanding who are the different movers and influencers within each different stakeholders, and identifying how they can actually push the system. So we need to sort of identify these individuals and sort of push them into that direction. I think that's basically what I find in the research. So understanding the power dynamics and who are the people who can influence these changes.
So when we design the alignment of at least these three stakeholders, climate change, disaster resilient, and sustainable development, and behind this there will be many parties involved, and then the power dynamic is important. We need to identify, because not everyone is the mover of the bigger critical mass to achieve the goal. Thank you very much. Dr. Lachimi, please, your observation on sustainable resilience.
Let me start by saying good morning to everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and honored to be speaking about displacement and sustainable resilience on behalf of the IDMC. And this has been a very, very interesting start of the panel, indeed. And I think I am the unluckiest one to be at the end of it, because what more can I say? So I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective, speaking on displacement. So here I'm talking about people moving out of harm's way when a disaster occurs. And in this lens, what we see is that this mobility movement, this intention to move, to get out of harm's way, is underlined by multiple factors. Where people move, how they move, and even whether they end up moving is shaped by pre-existing migration systems, resources, and networks of affected households, government and humanitarian interventions, and of course, in the broader development context. So this is what you beautifully put in together, sir, that it is 3-in-1. Everything is interlinked, everything is interconnected, and all of us represented here are only looking at one aspect of this movement. And in order to break the silos, this is the exact kind of opportunity for us to be talking to one another, for us to be understanding how different perspectives can come from the same issue and what gaps there are in addressing them. And for me and my organization, data is the answer to a lot of these questions. Having the evidence to inform kind of the decisions that we will have to make, having the data identify what gaps there are, can help us advance this conversation along the way. I'll stop at that.
I like the thing that you mentioned about breaking the silos. I mean, somehow that is a very natural now for our design, a work environment, is to immediately build silo with the existing system. And sometimes without us realizing it. I mean, one of the easiest thing to see how big the silo is about the word that we use. Is it we use they more than we use us. So it's like everything become them, become they. But then you mentioned about your work, data, monitoring, analysis. How do you see from your observation about the importance of data and monitoring in this silos mentality? Does it create more boundaries, or actually, when we use data, that is a potential way of breaking the silo, digital data, whatever it is, but you know more. Any thought?
It's a very challenging question. Data for me is at the heart of a lot of the decisions that we make. And indeed, those decisions tend to be silo decisions. Whether I want to move in the line of an incoming threat, what are certain decisions or factors I would need to consider to make that decision is really interdependent. And what we at IDMC do, we're recording the responses. We don't know all these underlying factors. And that is where we realize that we need to consider all these different facets to help us inform policies. Policies are going to be more targeted, and they should be. If they are targeted, they can get more maximum impacts, right? But to get the maximum impact, those reflections have to be multidisciplinary. It shouldn't just be siloed or individualistic. And I think the data is at the heart of that, answering that question. Once you identify what you're observing, once you identify other things that you haven't yet observed, that's where you go in and get more information to support certain hypotheses you have. An example I have is when you have, or at least in our experience, when we're recording more and more people moving due to a disaster, our first question is it because they're more vulnerable? Or is it because actually there are more facilities that are accepting people that you see this increase? People are now, using the facilities because they're available. And this is kind of the questions we ask. Is it a response issue? Is it an availability issue? Is it urbanization? People are becoming more aware, so they're making use of these facilities. There's so many things. And I'm hoping also speaking with you all will help me see what else we're currently not seeing.
Very interesting, because keeps hearing you're mentioning about multiple factors, and that is also one way of thinking of breaking the silo, because a lot of factors is beyond our cubicle, beyond our office, and sometimes beyond our countries. So that's one of the way, having a right mindset of thinking somewhere out there. People also have thinking about this and might have a solution as well. I would like to announce for participants to post questions through the pigeonhole. So participant might scan the barcode on the screen to access the pigeonhole and drop their question through the discussion session. The question will be addressed by the author later in the Q&A session. And then for those, for all of you who are here, then we'll just raise your hand. We'll entertain your thought question as well during our discussion. Now let's start back to this sequence again. To Ibu Tata. I remember that the GPDR was the starting point for sustainable resilience, and that was in Bali, Indonesia. But from the article that you and your team writing for Armor, any examples of sustainable resilience in Indonesian context?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, actually, Pak. And yes, we do actually provide some examples in the articles, and most of the examples are actually water-related. And one of the very good example we see is in Bali itself, and also in Yogyakarta. We see how some communities are able to not only manage their own river, but also they manage to improve the livelihood of the village around the river. And that's one of the very few things that we would like to point out, the best example of the sustainable resilience. However, we are hoping that in the next few weeks, in the next few months, we will be able to gather more best case studies. We'll be able to gather more lesson learned on this. And we will hope we can present these findings in our next Global Forum for Sustainable Resilience, which will be held in September in Jakarta. So yeah, most of the evidence that we've gathered so far is still related to water, but we believe that there are more good examples in the grassroots level. And it's only from Indonesia. And in the near future, we hope that we can also find some other good examples from other ASEAN member states as well.
It's very interesting because you mentioned about village in Bali. And I understand there is a so-called resilient village or desa tangguh, which is very much on disaster. Any case in Indonesia as well where they have, for example, I don't know, climate village and sustainable village? Do we have that example as in from Indonesia?
Yes, actually we do. But again, one of the challenge that we face is the climate resilient villages are still under different ministry, responsibility of different ministry, for example. So in BNPB, we may use a different terminology, we may use like different indicators, but actually in different ministry, they've already done similar activities with almost same goals, long-term and short-term goals, but we put different labels on it. So yeah, it's one of the challenges that we need to deal with.
So I think it's some of the issues that we will need to address when we talk about building sustainable resilience is about, again, how do we align different stakeholders, because each of them will have their own project which sometimes associated with their performance as well. So that's one of the cases in Indonesia. I'll come back to you later, Ibu, but I'll move to Mr. Sadhu. Explain about riskscape. Is it risk landscape or something else?
Yeah, Pak. Thank you, Pak, for the question. I try to explain with the plain English. So, with regards to your question about what is the riskscape, it's actually in our article, we try to assess the ASEAN risk landscape.
Okay. And what does it mean when you say ASEAN risk landscape? Is it certain what we call data on risk, or because I'm thinking landscape? What is that actually, the risk landscape?
Okay, Pak. I will start with the equation that we are using to actually assess the ASEAN disaster risk. Actually, in our equation to measure how risks are ASEANs due to the disasters caused by natural hazard, it's comprised of three main parameters that we utilize. The first one, we use the hazard, multi-hazard, and this multi-hazard, it's actually will either increase, if it's high, and then the risk of the disasters in ASEAN will be also high. And in opposite of this hazard, we have what we call the coping capacity and vulnerability, which is these two combined will comprise what we call the resilience factor to fight against the hazards component.
So the risk landscape will contribute to our ability to determine the resilient factor.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah.
And any observation from your article about sequence of time, period of time, whether the resiliency is up and down or there is any gap in between?
Yeah, thank you, Pak. From our article, with regards to the ASEAN riskscape in the 4th edition of AMOR, we observe that actually the hazard is increased over time.
So the hazard is increasing?
Hazard increase over time.
So this is data we are talking?
Yes, yes, data. And the interesting part is actually, if we compare with the previous ARMOR edition, which also assess the ASEAN risk, we see that the resilience component, it's actually also increased from all the 10 ASEAN member states. That is why when we incorporate this resilience component, when we calculate the disaster risk, it's actually in overall, there is a decreasing of average 9% across the all ASEAN member states.
What is decreasing? Is it the resilience index or?
the decreasing of the risk. Because the resilience compared to the previous edition is actually higher. Yeah, it either the member states higher on the coping capacity or they decreasing the vulnerability.
So let me understand this. An old man will need a bit of bandwidth to think, but I need to understand the sequence. So what we have seen in ASEAN, there is an increase of hazard going up. But then at the same time, we measure the resilience of ASEAN countries toward the hazard, and somehow the resilience capability also going up. So because the resilience going up, meaning the coping capacity is going up, then the risk when we measure is actually decreasing.
That's correct, Pak. And it's not only a coping capacity, but also, according to our assessment, the member state also can decrease their vulnerability. Vulnerability also. And because we incorporate the sustainable resilience component to our calculation, so we see either from vulnerability or coping capacity, which these two components build the resilience. You can see that these two, it actually can make the risk in ASEAN, like I mentioned in our article, that on average for all the 10 ASEAN member states, it's around 9% of the decreasing of the risk. Yeah.
Now, in your article, have you seen or any study or observation about example of how member state decrease the vulnerability and increase the coping capacity? Any observation on that?
Yeah, thank you, Pak. So it varies, Pak, depend on the member states. We also, maybe in the keynote address by Pak Raditya, the Deputy Minister of the System Strategy, which mentioned that actually sustainable resilience have, like the framework is more or less is already been there, like in the Paris Agreement, in the SDGs progress, as well as through the SDGs, Paris Agreement, and then SFDRR. And we actually assess this, Pak. And each member states have their own, for example, when we talk about SDGs, some member states have, progress increasing in the no poverty, and some member states have the increasing on the climate action, and so on and so on. So each member states have their own specialties with regards to the, for example, when we talk about SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which difference in each member state. And we assess all this, and we see that because of this sustainability, that going to the efforts of the resiliency, we see that this can decrease the disasters.
So your observation in the region, hazard is going up. However, that doesn't mean that we cannot do anything about it, but then you have seen that the member state able to reduce the vulnerability and then also increase the coping capacity. Now the combination of this is about strengthening the resilience, which at the end result, the risk is actually going lower because our coping capacity is going up. And any relation with this, if we talk about how all of this funding contribute to building sustainable resilience. So we talk about hazard, we talk about vulnerability, we talk about coping capacity. Any relation of this with achieving sustainable resilience?
Difficult question, ya, Pak. So, yeah, Pak. I think it's been mentioned that there is a lot of efforts to gain the resilience, to achieve the resilience, and whether this is resilient is sustainable or not. I will give some example ya Pak. Maybe during, for example, tropical cyclone in the Philippines, for example. This time, we can monitor since it's still on the level of the low pressure area. Even it's more than a week before it made landfall. Not only the ASEAN, but also the member states can do that, do this monitoring efforts. So the capacity is actually increased. And it's not only by one of the member states, the other member states also can do this kind of forecasting and monitoring. And with this, they can also have prevention action, anticipation action, if this forecast can hit for another, some part in this area. So the coping capacity is increased to reduce the risk, something like that.
Thank you very much. Now I get a better understanding. Next, Professor Ian.
Yes.
There's an interesting word that you put on your article. There's disaster threat passivity phenomena.
Yes.
What is that?
Okay, so most of our conversation when we talk about disaster risk reduction and management, we usually would talk about hazards assessment, vulnerability index, and all these things. But I am interested in knowing why some people, despite their despite exposure to repeated threats, continue to live and behave in a way that is indifferent and apathetic and passive and complacent to the presence of imminent threats. So what I did in my study, it's actually a concept analysis where I culled different literature and focused on analyzing what disaster threat passivity is. So finally, I found that passivity is characterized by the attitudinal tendency for individuals and maybe even communities to continue to disregard and display indifference and undervalue the risk associated with being exposed to natural hazards. And over time, this is generated because most people have misinformed or maybe uninformed knowledge, understanding, and maybe presupposition about the presence of threats. And over time, these knowledge and understanding becomes their way of life. And over time, it becomes ingrained into their daily activities such that even at the presence of a threat, they no longer display measures to make sure that these are prevented when they happen. So in times when disaster strikes, people who are passive have maybe uninformed decision-making, making our actions, maybe responses from the government ineffective because people in the ground are unable to appreciate fully the existence of the threat, or maybe because they are disregarding these issues despite being aware that it is imminent. So it's different from having no idea, or it's different from having lack of awareness about the threat, because certainly even the most informed people can still display passive behaviors towards a threat.
I see. So let me understand this. So when we talk about passive behavior, not that they don't understand the threat.
Yes.
So the people will think there is a possibility of earthquake, flood, and then not that they don't know about it.
Yes.
But there is no motivation to take action against it. So would be an attitude of, instead of taking necessary action, then what happened with this passivity is it's an okay lah attitude, you know?
Yes.
Okay lah, we'll think about it later, and then I just not know why you get so worried about this, and that create complacent. And is that because whatever they're worried about never happened, or because there is another other pressure that something else need to be done instead of putting their attention toward this threat, like other pressing issues about the need of food on the table, you know, medical and other, like immediately if you don't do it now, you will receive the consequence right now. But the prevention is, you know, it might. What is your observation on that?
Okay, so this behavior, this passive behaviors, is not merely a spontaneous reaction, meaning that it is a reflection of the individual's history, individual's knowledge and outlook. So it's multifaceted. It could be that they have experienced disasters in the past which they felt were not severe enough, and it did not prompt a certain degree of response that's needed for it at that point in time. So basically, passivity is multidimensional. It may be because of the culture. There are cultures in the world that are fatalistic. For instance, in the Philippines, we have what we call bahala na attitude, meaning there is resignation to God. Whatever happens.
Okay.
That's one. It
That's
could
real.
also be because there's lack of resources. Even if you want to prepare, you do not have the wherewithals for that. You don't have the necessary training. You don't necessarily have the equipment to be used, the infrastructure for that. There are also plenty of other things. For instance, there's confirmation bias. For example, there's impact neglect, and so many other things that's working out and that's leading to this particular kind of attitude. So disaster passivity is actually regressive to resilience, because if a person is unprepared because he continues to display passive attitudes, he might not have the necessary readiness and preparation come disasters.
So this passive attitude basically lead to our ability for readiness and preparedness, because we just don't want to do the preparedness and readiness because either we don't think it's going to happen, other pressing issues, lack of resources, and then at the end, give it to God to take care of it, and if it happened, it happened.
Well, I think that responsiveness, assertiveness is the antithesis for passivity. So when someone becomes aware of the need to perform actions, assertive actions towards responsiveness, then over time, if this is built up, it leads to resilience.
Okay. Now, does your article also cover, so we understand there's a passiveness on this. Anything that we can do to transform from this passiveness to not aggressiveness, but something like moving beyond passivity toward activity?
Yes. So I think that passivity can be countered with guided responsiveness. So people need to be educated, need to have awareness, and these prompts must come from people like us, people who are working in the disaster sphere, educators, those who are experts, disaster experts who are working in the field, because education and engagement in community for planning and all that needs to be conveyed to people in the grassroots so that they can be transformed from being passive into someone who has knowledge of what to do to counter passivity.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to Mr. Fairul on to your article, I think we focus a lot of technology as well on that. There is a question about improving climate risk assessment and management in informal settlement. Can you elaborate? Because I always think about technology is very much to structured settlement. You know, you got procedures and everything. Informal settlement with something that very much structured algorithm, perhaps. Please elaborate more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think when we think about traditional technologies, we think about all this structured, expert-driven knowledge. But I think when we think about informal settlements, these are very high vulnerability areas. So I think about Ian's passivity also, because they have a lot of more immediate concerns, such as their economic gain. So they take this risk as a given in their lives. So in that sense, these areas have a very low data. So we can't really assess like what are their risks on a day-to-day basis. So what we introduced in our article is that, okay, what are the open source, readily available technologies that could be employed in these areas that are more unstructured. So the three technologies that we introduced is remote sensing. So this is a very established tool and is becoming a lot more open source. And then we also introduced two other technologies which are more on the ground, which are low-cost sensors. So these are not your high-tech sensors, but these are very affordable and open source data technologies. And then the last one is employing citizen science. So thinking about sustainable resilience, putting people at the center, not only thinking of them as part of the center, but also including them in the whole process. So citizen science, getting the people in the informal settlements to also be part of the monitoring of the risks that they experience. So these are the different tools that we sort of suggest that could be employed in informal settlements. But this is monitoring for risks, but we also have to monitor the different types of solutions that we employ in informal settlements. So in the line of work that my research lab does, we look at nature-based solutions which can be employed, which are affordable solutions that can be employed in informal settlements. But there's a lot of uncertainty on what's the viability as well as how effective they are. So this needs to be monitored. And using these different tools, we could monitor how effective they are and make changes to how we implement them in informal settlements.
So when you mention informal settlement in your article, do you put boundaries on what is informal settlement, what would be a formal settlement? What would be the visual for informal settlement? Any example, perhaps?
So I think this varies depending on who you ask, and the literature is quite, so the boundaries are not very clear sometimes, but I think one of the key sort of definitions of informal settlements is looking at the types of households and like they are usually very dense, poorly built infrastructure. Some examples of what these informal settlements are.
I'm not sure whether this is covering in your article as well. Am I correct to assume that informal settlement is basically observing more threat or risk compared to formal settlement? Would that be the case? Can we see that way because of my assumption when we talk about formal settlement, something formal has been established for that community. But informal, you got quite range of flexibility.
Yeah. One more thing to add to your previous question, and I think relates to this question, is also there's a lack of tenureship in, like they don't own the land, like the people living in informal settlements don't own the land. So I think that adds an additional dimension of insecurity, of they could be displaced quite easily at any time. And therefore, they tend to choose areas which are more high risk and high hazards, such as areas by riverbanks.
Yes.
So thinking about these areas as high hazard areas and therefore needing to monitor and look at what are the risks that they face. Yeah.
And one of the things that very interesting, you mentioned that if you want to get in this technology with the informal settlement, then their involvement in this part of actions is very important. How's your observation whether they are very keen to get involved or not in this technology?
So I think there are two camps on this. So one is that they are interested, especially when NGOs or academics come in and sort of introduce these technologies to them. But I think we also find that because of the pressing, more immediate demands of their lives, so like employment, so monitoring does take their time and effort. So it can be quite challenging for them to be involved in this. So it's a lot about building collaborations and sort of finding ways to make it easy and setting up the systems for them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Fairul. Now, Dr. Lechmi, this is about historical data, derived trend and pattern on displacement. I think I would like to learn more from your article. Any interesting findings? And even sometime when we write an article, when we do a bit of research, like, wow, this is interesting. Your observation from your own article.
Yeah, I'm delighted to summarize my article and highlight what's really relevant here. I think we started our article talking about data, right? Data being at the heart of the decision making. Whether it is to buy iPhone or, if you want to register your kid to the right school, or even, like I said, to evacuate or not, let's stay and risk it, those decisions are informed by data. Now, without data to inform that decision making essentially becomes ad hoc, inconsistent, and very risky. So in the context of enhancing sustainable resilience, data on displacement for us is an important aspect. Now, I'm going to also try and define what we're looking at here, internal displacement. We're looking at people who are moving out of harm's way from an impending threat of a disaster. This has to happen within the boundaries of a country for it to be internal. If not, we're talking about cross-border. And we also understand this as a response. It is a response to move away from that threat, and this response can happen at any stage, before the threat manifests, during the manifestation of the threat, and even after. So we used our data to see how decisions can be made at different stages of the threat. And this can help provide operational insights. So first, it helped us to understand how to allocate adequate resources to support these movements, to support IDPs who will end up in evacuation centers. We also saw that it tells us how we can prevent this from happening again. Finally, it did also tell us how to ensure, when it's not avoidable, how to make sure that these movements remain short-term, are timely, and they therefore can avoid becoming protracted or too prolonged, because there are adverse effects related to being displaced for far too long. Now, the article that I co-wrote with my colleague, we looked at 4 different case studies in ASEAN, where data on displacement has true operational relevance towards building resilience. Like I said, it can help us to ensure timely interventions, ensure adequate resource mobilization. It can also show us how potentially displacement can be prolonged due to household destruction. So how to build resilience is preparing for such disasters at any stage, before, during, after. The data landscape in the ASEAN region, when it comes to displacement, is particularly rich. There is consistent, timely, and systematic reporting that allows us to study this kind of trends and patterns. However, we still acknowledge that more can be done. More can be done to improve the quality of the data, particularly providing additional disaggregation in terms of time, space, and also demography of those displaced can help to further support targeted responses. And so this is also our conclusion, that we have what we need. We have to consider underlying factors, but even with the data that we have, it is important to make sure it's of a better quality towards building the sustainable resilience.
Thank you. We're talking about historical data, and then using that historical data to project trend based on the past, in particular for displacement. From your observation, what would be the accuracy of, of course there's no 100% of what we call prediction is correct, but prediction based on historical data would always, to a certain degree, help the decision-making process. So how do you see this, using past data and then projecting the possibility of displacement movement in the future?
There are many contentions around predicting with accuracy displacement trends in the future. In my opinion, historical data is a good foundation. It's a sound foundation to guide past, or at least understand past interventions and how they can be improved. Whether they can predict displacement will require quite a lot of thinking and incorporating data on underlying factors. We mentioned, people's responses to disaster is personal, but it's also influenced by policy, it's also influenced by tradition, their education, their access. So it's very hard to project. But what we have learned is this information can help us understand what responses have been like and how we can then improve responses. And we also, in the article that we wrote, identified that the responses can be throughout. Because typically what happens is interventions happen after the disaster takes place. But you can intervene before. You can come up with preemptive evacuations to make sure people are moved out early. You can ensure that this remains short. You can ensure that the infrastructure doesn't get destroyed so that they can resume their lives as they knew it after the disaster passes. So these are reflections that the past data can provide us with.
So basically it creates a bit of a sense of predictability, and then based on that, then we can plan for something. Instead of no data at all, and then we just respond when it, knocking our door. So, but now with that, there's a sense of predictability, then we can have a bit of planning and scenario.
So it will be controlled chaos.
I see, okay. So that controlled chaos is the end of our session now for the moment. Now we get a lot of questions from Pigeonholes. But before I turn to the Pigeonhole, I'm just going to ask from the audience, any observation, question, comments? All right. Panto, please. Well, I might know you. Perhaps you can introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Avianto Amri. I'm from Predict. I'm one of the lucky ones who become the reviewers of the article. And it's so fascinating, the articles, and it's really interesting. But I want to touch from the last one about data. In the world of humanitarians, there's the no regrets policy, where if there's an incoming threats, then you put all of your resources there to anticipate. But that's the old days, because right now we don't have that resources. The resources are very limited. But from that discussions earlier, it struck me that using data in a smart way, it creates more effective and efficient response. You can plan it more carefully, which dose, which type of expertise needed, and etc. But it looks like we're getting to know more and more and more about the threats. On that end, we have a greater understanding, but are we moving in the right pace to understand, on the other side, the people who are using the data? In the world where people have fear of missing out, where a lot of chaos, there's a lot of short time span, it's difficult, there's so many data as well. It's not about there's no data, but so many data, but how to understand that and move that into an actionable terms, those are the challenges that we are facing. So where are we in understanding the people who will be using data? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Anto. We'll combine with other. Now let us read the pigeonhole. Is it the same with, 20 votes. Anonymous. This is like a hacker. What are the most transformative efforts need to be done to achieve sustainable resilience? Can we get a second vote? Most voted questions? Is sustainable resilience just another buzzword? Has there been any meaningful action toward this? Next. Looking different capacities from the ASEAN member state, how can we ensure that this sustainable resilience will be implemented? So from these three questions, we go back to number one? So it's basically transforming sustainable resilience from discussion into action. And I sense there is similarity between the three top most voted questions. This one, transformation effort to achieve sustainable, is basically transforming something from discussion into something that can be done. And then the second most voted is just another buzzword, meaningful action, again. So transformation, action, and then 5 vote, capacities to ensure that sustainable resilience will be implemented. So the biggest question of these top three question, plus with what Pak Anto asking, which is a bit different. But from the pigeonhole, we are talking about what are necessary actions for sustainable resilience, from articles, from declaration, from discussion. We can transform this into a meaningful action that can be implemented. So that is the big question for all the panelists, but there is one specific question for Dr. Lachemi on data in terms of the other side of those who are receiving the data, the people. How do we make them understand the data? And I'll let you answer that first.
Sure, that's a very good question. And I think when we're on the other side of the table, we're always asking for more data, but we never tell people who are collecting the data what we want to make use the data for. So the short answer to the question is, where are we, right? And I think we are not too far behind. We are moving in the right direction. The ASEAN in particular is a region that collects a lot of information. What, in my experience, I feel that they are currently lacking is making those connections. You said, yeah, we have theory, but in practice it's something different. It's the same. We keep saying we need more data, but actually data on displacement is very, very rich. It's relatively complete compared to the other regions, even in Asia Pacific. But what operational use has the data been used for remains lacking. A lot of the people, BNPB, VDMA, DTPM, they're collecting all this information, but are they analyzing this information in a smart, effective way to come up with responses? I think we need to see from experience, but it's true, our role here at IDMC is to allow you to see how this data can be put to use, allow you to identify operationalizing this data, make it more actionable. And for the Asia-Pacific region, there is a recognition that this data can be operationable, can be actionable, and to make it so, to bring it to the eye, to catch the attention of policymakers, this data has to be nationalized. And there is an effort to making disaster-related statistics a more national effort so that this information is reported as part of NSS, National Statistics Systems. And when we get there, this information is going to be handy for operationalizing at the national level, policy-making decision on disaster risk reduction, on climate change, on sustainable development. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. I think I'll give you to continue. So we'll go this way now. Answering the question that we summarized of how do we transform this sustainable resilience from declaration to action? Dr. Leshmi, I want to give you your first thought on that, and then I'll give to you, and then we continue.
Transforming. Here I would say operationalizing, really understanding what we're getting to with the data is trying to get at the most granular level possible on what assistance is required, what action needs to be taken. And this is what we're currently missing. We have a good basis, but we still don't know what kinds of populations get displaced the most, where exactly they live, how distance is a factor in moving out of harm's way. And this granularity will be very, very essential in helping us come up with ways we can create this, controlled chaos, make sure people are moving in the right locations, making sure they're also dispersed so that resources or available services are divided equilibriumly, in balance. So I think that's where I see transformation taking place, really granularity of the data to inform these decisions.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Fairul.
Yeah, I would like to sort of build on what Dr. Leshmi mentioned. So we have this data, and I think, but I think we have to take a step back. I think I mentioned this in the start of the panel, is to sort of build these relationships and understanding what sustainable resilience is for different stakeholders, and then coming to a consensus. And then through those goals, then we can identify what are the data needs to achieve these goals and the policies that we want to implement to achieve these goals. And then from there, we identify what data is available, create the relationships that help us get access to this data, and as well as finding the gaps. So in the case of informal settlements where data is lacking, building up the database for those areas. So understanding the goals at the different scales, from people to governments to different stakeholders. I think this relationship building has to be done for transformative action. That's my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Professor Ian, please.
Yes, so I'd like to answer the question in the context of the article that I've made. So I'd like to look at it on a micro level scale. I think that we do not have paucity in terms of policies, research works, scholarly works on the higher level disaster scheme. However, I think that there has to be done on the micro level, meaning that the bottleneck in the conversation on sustainability is really on the grassroots level, I think, because scholars have said in the past that when disaster strikes, there is enhanced efforts on responsiveness, on resilience. It becomes a hot topic for everyone, especially those who are involved, especially those who are concerned. But over time, after a disaster strikes, all these efforts, all these emotions, they tend to wane, they tend to dwindle, they fizzle out, and then we start from passive stances again. So I think that we still need to do more data, have more data on maybe the social determinants of why people continue to behave complacently despite repeated exposure to threats. And then, if we have enough data for that, we can have more informed policies that will address issues on the grassroots level.
Thank you. Mr. Sadhu, your observation on how do we transform the sustainable resilience from discussion into action? What would be your ideas or thought?
Thank you. Thank you, Pak, for the question, also for the open for me. So I'm just echoing what our colleagues already mentioned about the policy to support sustainable resilience and also the data to also take a look on it. But I also want to add, I think it's for the words of the, let's say we mentioned about transformation and then move it into operationalization.
Okay.
But in my perspective, it's actually a continuation, Pak.
Okay.
So I think it's already been addressed by Dr. Aditya Jati about the sustainable resilience and what behind this. You also already provide us with some of the information about the three SFDRR, Paris Agreement, as well as the SDGs. And actually, the member states is already implement, and all these three have already their indicators, and we already have assessed it. And in our article, we also incorporate these efforts to how we calculate the risk. So it's actually, in my perspective, in our perspective, it's a matter of the continuation of this effort to build the sustainable resilience in the ASEAN region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ibu Tata, your thought on how do we transform this sustainable resilience from declaration to implementation and so on, please.
Yes, thank you, Pak. I think it's very natural after we talk the talk and then people ask how do we walk the talk.
Yes.
So, in my personal opinion, I think one of the most important thing we need to address is how to make it integrated planning first, whether it's in macro level or in micro level. For example, in national or macro level, we in Indonesia try to integrate these three global commitments in our national development plans. Well, in micro level, for example, like previously mentioned about the mobilizations, we try to better manage the planned relocations of the people by also paying attention to not only the potential disasters, but also climate change and any other man-made disasters, for example. The second one I need to point out is, in the ASEAN Leaders Declaration itself, we already acknowledge the importance of engagement of the vulnerable groups and also engagement of the youth. So this is a very good long-term investment for the ASEAN region to actually paying attention to the youth. And this very much relates to my third points regarding technology and innovations. We have discussed about the importance of data, but I think we forget to mention about how can we communicate the results of the data better to the community. We forget to address the risk communications that sometimes maybe among us, among the policymakers, it's actually solved. For us, it's no problem to translate with each other, but when we try to communicate what we want to the people, we got lost in translations because the risk communication was just not there. So those are three transformation that I think it needs to walk the talk.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our time on the screen is already 0, 0, 0, and keep on blinking. It means that our time is up. So allow me to, first my apologies for those who have put effort in putting the questions in the pigeonhole, but we're very sorry that our time is very limited. Now, before closing the session, allow me to summarize this interesting discussion, which is very difficult as well, because so many interesting information being presented by the panelists. But the way I see it, when we talk about sustainable resilience, it's about three things. One is about alignment of policy to the grassroots or community. So we want to make sure that policy and implementation and community is aligned, not policy going on the right and implementation on the left. So alignment of policy and implementation, that would be first takeaway. Number two is alignment of interest of the stakeholders involved in this process, because so many stakeholders will be involved when we talk about sustainable resilience. Stakeholders from climate change, stakeholders from disaster management, stakeholders from sustainable development goals. So there might be a need for us to align the interests of different stakeholders, and then we need to avoid the zero-sum game, which is a portion of people will win, the other portion of peer stakeholder will lose. So we need to find a win-win solution for all the stakeholders to move forward on this sustainable resilience. And the third one is alignment of data and information as a basis for communication of different stakeholders and also for the community. So that are the three things that I think is a takeaway. But to conclude our session today, I will let each of the panelists to give one final sentence as a closing remark of each of you. I'll start with from left, please. Dr. Lachimi, start from you, your final sentence.
Instead of sentence, I'll go for words. I'm going to go for 3 Ds. Data, determination, and I forgot the next D. The 2 Ds. So here is really about making sure we are getting the data right, we're making the right decisions. Sorry, that's the 3rd D. Data, decisions, and determination, and determined to make use of the data in the right way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fairul?
I think my closing statement would be to consider who sustainable resilience is for, and sort of aligning the data to meet who we are trying to get this sustainable resilience for.
Thank you. Ian, please.
Maybe just to improve commitment to do further research on disaster sphere.
Thank you. Mr. Sadhu, your final closing statement.
Thank you, Pak. Final closing statement. If I refer to our article, actually, each member state has their own strong point with regards to the resilience factor that I mentioned about this also incorporating the sustainable resilience component. And I think the interesting part is actually how the ASEAN member states can explore the possibility to support each other. So it's not the resilience for each member state, but resilience among the ASEAN region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ibu Tata, your final statement.
Thank you, Pak. By having these ASEAN Leaders Declarations, actually it shows that sustainable resilience is not a national pursuit of any Asian member states, but it's a regional pursuit of this beloved region. So let's work hand in hand and collaborate together for a better and safer region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause for a great discussion. Thank you so much for the panelists. It's been a pleasure to have a discussion with you. Thank you, and hand over to the MC.
Thank you once again to our moderators, panelists, and the audience members, and also the organizers for making these discussions possible. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the launch of the AHA Center's Grant and Partnership Management Portal, or ATLAS. Ladies and gentlemen, since its establishment in 2011, the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management, or AHA Center, has been initiating numerous partnerships with the ASEAN dialogue partners. As collaboration grows and the various supports come, the AHA Center needs to have a robust system to manage those upcoming resources in a way that the organization remains effective and efficient to serve the ASEAN member states. The Atlas also addresses these needs by presenting a dynamic web-based portal to manage all cooperations and collaborations arrangements, including the Memorandum of Intent and the grants from all of the AHA Center's partners effectively. Through a transparent and accountable fashion, the AHA Center is able to nurture trust and confidence of our governing board, and as well as our donors and partners. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to witness the launch of the AHA Center Grant and Partnership Management Portal.
Welcome to the AHA Center's Grant and Partnership Management Portal, a cornerstone for resource mobilization and efficient partnership management. Manage memorandums of intent with ease, streamlining the process of welcoming new partners while clarifying the non-legally binding nature of MOIs. Dive into a comprehensive guide on grant contract functionalities. This includes an overview, managing partners, understanding the logical framework, checking contract status, reporting, sharing files, engaging in discussions, and managing allocations. Generate insightful reports effortlessly, whether tracking grant progress or analyzing partnership outcomes. Our portal makes it simple. This capability empowers us to make informed decisions, fostering a culture of transparency and accountability. The AHA Center's Grant and Partnership Management Portal has a dual environmental setup. It not only serves as the final database, but also facilitates a learning platform for new staff. For the best experience with this portal, it's recommended to access it through Google Chrome, including security features, like a few minutes your laptop idle, it will auto-log out and account lock after multiple failed login attempts. Please make sure your browser is up to date for seamless navigation. Need help? Our detailed user manual and support are ready to assist. Join us in strengthening ASEAN's disaster management efforts. Visit our website to learn more. Together, let's build a stronger, more connected ASEAN.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now we have reached the end of this launch event. So we hope you have been inspired to drive a positive change and contribute to building a more resilient ASEAN community and a safer future for all. Now, I'm heading off. Thank you and have a pleasant day ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, this announcement is aimed for the ASEAN member states for those who will join the cultural visit. So we will gather at the lobby at 12:45. Once again, we will gather at the lobby at 12:45, and the travel is expected to take an appropriately an hour and 15 minutes. And the dress code is actually casual, and the